Okay, on today's video, we're going to talk about starting budgets necessary to start doing PPC, maybe on a new platform or maybe just starting out completely on your own. A lot of people ask this question to me, which is the reason I put this information into a video. I give you in this video the best or closest answer possible to the right answer every time as I can, and in practicality does actually work. So what is the right actual starting budget with a PPC campaign? Lots of people ask me when this question when they start out. Corey, what's the right budget should we start out with here? Assuming that they already know that for sure they're going to go through with some PPC, and I help people help people with their PPC strategy so their campaigns actually work. It's way tougher to get it to work than the average person thinks. And so anyway, people that know that, they try it out for themselves, then they come to me afterwards, but that I have to give them an answer of what's the starting budget. Because obviously we don't want to start too low, start too high. The answer itself does not have to be totally random here, and which the average person that doesn't have a lot of experience is just going to cherry pick an answer right out of the air. $47 a day or whatever. It could have some actual strategy to it, what you actually choose. The more preparation you do with PPC in general, the better you're going to do overall. The people who prepare the best and the most generally are the ones that make it into the 20% who try PPC and actually have it pay for itself and is profitable. If you don't know that most people don't make money with PPC, well, now you know, and you'll find that out sooner or later depending on where you're at and have, whether you follow my advice or not. So, and part of that is actually picking the right starting budget, but also tied to that understanding what that starting budget what to expect out of it, what's you're expecting too much, and ultimately when are you're going at it too softly and you're pissing away a bunch of time. The unfortunate part of this answer to the question of what should my starting PPC ad budget or online advertising budget be, which PPC really applies to Facebook or most other online advertising because you're paying per click. This also applies to Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, whatever else that you're possibly doing to advertise online, because 99% of online advertising, you pay for a click. You don't pay for ad space by the month, okay? So this is all tied in together. The answer to this question, no matter whether you go more budget or less budget, you'll have to end up doing the same things overall to get the results on your campaign. When I say results, this isn't an arbitrary thing like, what is results? Results, at the end of the day, are campaigns that pay for our expenses, our goods, our cost to deliver our services, the cost of the ad spend, the cost of anybody that we need to pay to help us do our marketing, management fees, the cost of the ad spend itself. Hit profitability. Results equals profitability after all expenses in my book here. There is a different optimization strategy that you'll want to apply if you start out with less budget or you start out with more budget to get the best outcome. Okay, so even though, in other words, if you're going to start out with little money or more money, each one will have a little bit of a different setup and optimization quote-unquote process will go through, even though both of those, whether you start out with a lot or a little, the same overall things are done here, okay? And whether you start out with a low budget or high budget has a lot more to do with you and your financial position and your position in your market and where you're at today than does the actual PPC, okay? And I'll explain how that works now. If you have less money starting out, then you generally start out with less money going into the budget, like obviously, duh, right? Let me get to the specifics here. If you have less money, what you're going to do, or what you should do, is you're going to target less keywords or less budget per keyword that you're testing out starting out. And this word keyword can be swapped out with audience if you're doing display advertising, okay? Less budget, generally speaking, is going to be more suited for those with low overhead. When I say overhead, it means what are your current well, just what it sounds like. What's your monthly cost to keep your business running? And then with that, do you have time to actually optimize this yourself as the owner? Or do you have to pay somebody else to optimize it? Because if you have to pay someone else to optimize it, then if you spend less on your budget, then you may not end up better off, because now you're paying a higher proportion of quote unquote management fees to run your campaigns, to test them out, than you should to get the most optimal outcome. So in other words, if you have a high overhead to actually to manage and run these campaigns, then you're better suited to spend more on the actual ads starting out. That's the big thing there. If you have more money, it's the flip side. You will be able to, should target more keywords or more budget per keyword. And that's more money put in initially is better suited for those with a high overhead, so that you're getting more value out of that person helping you set it up. In other words, whether it's an employee or an ad agency, because it's going to take some time for it to work, okay? PPC is not a light switch. You're not going to put some money into it. You're going to turn it on, and in a week, you're going to know whether it works or not. The people who never make money at PPC, that's basically mostly what they're all falling for. They think it's a light switch. They think it's like a yellow page ad. It's there or it's not there. It works or it doesn't work. The people who make lots of money on PPC know that's BS. They know it took some time and some money and some process to get to where they were. They seem big. They seem like they just showed up one day and had a whole bunch of money and they're starting doing it. No, they started out small. They went through the process that took to get to be big with their ad campaign, recycling their money back into it, and now that just looks like it's easy for them. It wasn't. So you could start with a $10 a day budget, as little as $10 a day. That would be perfectly fine. Or you could start with a $300 a day budget, depending on your social positioning in your market you are trying to enter. So along the same lines as I was speaking of before, if you have to pay this ad agency $5,000 a month, it obviously doesn't make any sense, right, to spend $10 a day on your ad campaigns, because you have to factor in the cost of the management fee and the ad spend and whether or not you got profitability. So you don't want to start out too low, but obviously you also don't want to start out too high, because before it works, you've got to expect that it's not going to work. If you get my point, there's a process that you have to go through to let Google and or Facebook and or LinkedIn, wherever you're running the ads, to figure out through their machine learning process that they have where your ad should be pushed out. And even though you're advertising on XYZ keyword, there's a bunch of people searching for that keyword. And so what the ad platforms do, which is the reason why it takes so long for things to work initially, is they have to figure out what are the steps, what are the things that people do before they search this keyword that matches up with XYZ product versus another product that could be shown for that particular keyword or search or audience that you're targeting. And that can only be solved for you and for the ad network that's trying to get your ads to work with actual trial and error process. You're always trying to optimize and help the Facebook, Google out as much as you can, narrow down the options. But at some level, they still got to do some testing on their side, because there's levers that they have that you just don't get to see. Okay, so respectively, if you have, and the way that you should look at this is that testing process that I explained, that testing process has to occur and does occur on each keyword and on each audience that you're testing here. Okay, so if you have a bunch of keywords, then your budget is going to be spread out all across all those keywords. And when it takes so much minimum budget to figure out if a certain keyword works, because of that testing process that the ad network has to do, and what you have to do to narrow down the ads on your side, and also for you to be able to do to get the benefit of the doubt of having a good landing page and an ad that gets a good click-through rate, if you have a smaller budget, therefore, will do better off having less keywords, so you're not spreading it out over, and all you're going to do if you have more keywords than necessary on a small budget is just lengthen the amount of time that it's going to take to actually get what is the reasonable amount of data behind each keyword to see if each individual keyword will work. So if you start out with like even one keyword, you have a $10 a day budget, in a month or two, you'll already be able to figure out if that keyword works. So you could, and start profiting from it. And then you move on to the next one versus starting out with 100 keywords and it taking a year before any one keyword shows you if it works or not, if you get my point here. Okay. On the flip side, why doesn't everybody, even if you have a lot of money, start out with a few keywords, let those work, then move to the next set of keywords and the next set and the next set? The reason for that is, and the answer is, that a keyword or an audience that you're trying to target, or otherwise a group of people that you're trying to target with certain specified criteria, will only work if you've done your homework, your market research, and therefore your actions in which you're trying to figure out what you need to say on your ad to get their attention at the maximum rate to beat your competition, and what you need to do and say on your landing page to get them to want to respond at a rate typically more than your competition, which, by the way, 20% of the market you see at any time advertising in your market doing PPC are making money, because those are the ones that are doing a better job taking a user into a customer through their ad, through their landing page than anybody else. But if you are testing one keyword, so I got to start out making your landing page, making your ad, right? If you're just testing one keyword starting out, when, let's say, okay, instead of a year, it's going to take a month. We'll figure out if that keyword works already, because we got about 1,000 clicks on that keyword. That's enough data and time and process, if you will, just call it process, through that keyword to have it work already. But it's not guaranteed to work, because depending on how good that ad and landing page that you had tied to that, what your campaign that is trying to be put in front of people that search for that keyword, will depend if you actually at the end of the month see the return or not. That's more to do with your return than the keyword itself. If you have one keyword, now you get to the end of the month, you don't have a return, you don't actually know if it was the keyword's fault, or if it was your landing page's fault, or if it was your ad's fault. I'll group ad and landing page together, creative. So you don't know if your creative is the fault or the keyword. So now what has to happen? You got to test another single keyword on your small budget so that you don't have to wait a year again. Okay, after 1 month, we'll test another keyword. Wait another month, still don't have a return. I still don't know if it's really the keyword or the landing page, because I only tested 2 keywords. If you have a bigger budget, instead of $10 a day, you have $300 a day. Now I could test 100 keywords, and in a month have quality data behind 100 keywords here, right? Once I've tested 100 keywords, I know at the end of that if my creative sucks or it doesn't suck, because one of those keywords at least would have worked with this creative if the creative had the capacity to work. So then I could stop my campaigns if that's the case. I can rehash, figure out what kind of creative I need to really do here, do more market research, figure out what people want to hear and see from me, come out with a better product, whatever, put together new creative, and then rerun the campaign on those same keywords again, which then I know the creative's the problem, not the keywords, and then hopefully those keywords will produce at least some of the keywords in there had the capacity to work if the creative was right, and then therefore now you got the right creative, and then we'll take out maybe half the keywords that didn't work, we'll try another 100, and we'll keep going with the process. So you get the idea of also why you would want more budget, because one keyword won't work. Respectively, if you have more time than money, like anything in your business you're starting out, you're going to capitalize on your advantage, which is you have time as the owner who understands the market well to build better campaigns than your competition, which has to rely on somebody else who probably doesn't know the market as well to do that work for them. So you could start out with a $10 a day budget and probably know your creative is going to work, because you're going to spend an insane amount of time on the creative. You're going to do the creative, You're going to do some testing on it to see if people in your market like it or not, get feedback, whatever. So instead of spending, 100 hours on the creative that you would have normally had someone else spend, you're going to spend 1,000 hours respectively or something. You get the idea. We're going to spend 10 times more than what anybody else is going to spend. It's going to come from me, which is going to be more value per hour put into it or more output per hour in our creative to get a better creative overall, so that I have the highest possible chance when I start out my advertising on that single keyword that I'm going to start out advertising on, that I've eliminated as much chance that creative that I have for it to not to work, that when I get to the end of the month, that 1 month is still fine, because I know the creative, or very, very little chance that that creative is not going to work. So that at the end of the month, if the keyword doesn't work, which then I'll know pretty much it's just the keyword's fault at that point, we'll all get to test another keyword. And then it's still, at the worst case scenario, I'm looking at probably 3 to 6 months. I'll eventually find one keyword that will work, and I won't have to start out with much money, because I can have a $10 a day budget, and I can afford to lose $300 and have the campaign not work after a month. I'll live to advertise another day. I'll spend another $300 testing another keyword, and then I'll eventually find one that works. I'll take the money from that one keyword. I'll reinvest it in testing another keyword until I get a second keyword to work, and then I'll have those two keywords to see. You'll just keep basically doubling down. Those two keywords can go into two more, and two more, and then you got 4, 8, 16, 30, and then that's how you build up a huge account, starting with just a teeny amount of money, if you're willing to put more of your own time in, and you're also patient. Where people generally have a lot of problem going the natural progression of where I just went is when people have little money and they're impatient. Those two together almost guarantees failure. Because of all the things that I said, it doesn't work right away, and because you need data behind your campaigns, they're going to quit before it works. So we're going full circle. That's the main reason why people don't get PPC to work. You need the patience. You need to if you don't have money, put more time into your campaign so that they have a higher likelihood of having creative that works, and then, pay your dues, if you will. If you have more money, okay, well, we'll just test a whole bunch of stuff real fast, and it won't work. We'll shut it off. We'll try something else. We'll shut it off, and you'll eventually, through process of elimination, figure out what works for you that way, if it can work and your product's marketable, sellable, whatever. So, in a nutshell, that determines whether or not you need a small budget or a high budget. That doesn't give you a specific number. If you want a specific number, you could start out with $3 a day. I don't care. I put $10 a day here because that's generally like the smallest I would go if I was just starting a company. It's just me. I have very little money. And if you fall into the low end of the spectrum, basically almost broke, $10 a day. Whereas if you're an established company, okay, I'll start with a $300 a day budget. Why don't I say $3,000 a day, even though some people in the market are spending that? I have people come to me occasionally and say, Corey, what is the budget? And I say, $300 a day is plenty. Well, we want to spend, $3,000 a day. And I say, it takes time to do some initial understanding of how the creative that we have works and react to these, initial tests that we need to make. And it doesn't really help us too much to just throw piles of money at it. We need some adequate data to see what works, and then we could pour the piles of money on it, okay? Because regardless of whether we have a little money or a lot of money, we have to still do a little bit of investigation of what we got initially. We get some positive feedback, then we can pour it on. Whereas if we don't have positive feedback, there's going to be a lot of time between the time that we can react and the time that we get restarted again, where we regroup, where we just wasted a bunch of money, okay? So therefore, that's why I don't suggest anything more than $300 a day if you are interested. But that gives you a general range, okay, depending on whether you're total startup, let's say, or established company, and you have a lot more money than time. Now, going into a little bit further detail before I wrap this video up, I wanted to explain about the whole data acquisition process, why it takes so much time behind a certain keyword that you're testing or a certain audience that you're testing. Each keyword / audience will take a certain amount, minimum amount of clicks, and therefore budget to rack up a certain quality score or relevant score to actually see how anything will do before you can make a judgment call on it or not. So if you don't know what it is, quality score is Google's rating system to see how well you do promote or pitching people that are on their search engine that you want to have your ad show up for, which goes on a keyword by keyword basis. No matter how good of creative you have, no matter how perfect that keyword is for your product or service, you're going to have to pay your dues, like I was telling you before, that Google's going to have to realize that this is good they themselves. And generally that takes about 1,000 clicks or more to understand that what you have can actually beat the competition in terms of click-through rate on the ad, in terms of people not clicking back to Google once they've got to your landing page, because those are the two major factors there. Okay? So that's why I said when the biggest thing that causes people not to have results with PPC or never get it to work, they don't give the Google enough time to see what they have is good. Of course, they spend 15 minutes on their ads. It's never going to work anyway, because you're competing against people who spent cumulatively hundreds of hours on their stuff over time. You see that where they are now, you didn't see all the work that they put in. But even if they do put in some work initially, they still didn't, you'll start out a lot of times if you've done enough with your setup to beat everybody else in your space in terms of serving that consumer better than anybody else in terms of click-through rates and conversion rates on your landing page you're taking people to, that it'll start out at, $5 a click, and you'll end up at $1 a click once Google's got enough data behind, that particular keyword to give you and reward you that reduction in the cost per click, therefore, which comes in through a higher quality score that's a 10 quality score versus which goes down to a lowest score you can get is a 1. So you got to keep that aware. And again, it's on a keyword by keyword basis. If you're doing Facebook ads, they have a different word for it, which is relevant score, but it works the same way, roughly speaking. You're competing against all the other people who want to have their ads in front of people that are targeting that same group of people or audience, okay? You got to be able to, it's the same thing, you got to be able to get someone's attention better, i.e. higher click-through rate, and people who will ultimately be pleased by what they see when they get to the landing page. Otherwise, because basically why they do this is they don't want people that have a lot of money, but they do a piss poor job marketing to people, because people will then not want to click on any ad ever. They're looking for the long-term game here. They want people, if they do see an ad, they were helped by it, so they're more likely to want to click on an ad in the future versus totally avoid every ad ever, because they're going to make money at first, but they're going to lose it over time. So, on a Facebook audience, you're going to have usually more than 1,000 clicks as well to be able to get the benefit of the doubt for them and see your cost per click go down, which, a lot of times that cost per click has to be you've gotten the full benefit of what you did on your creative to be able to have profitability after all expenses on that particular audience that you're targeting, or, keyword I was mentioning before. So how long does that usually take? Well, 3 to 12 months, basically speaking, to have that 1,000 clicks on that keyword or audience, right? Unless you're targeting a keyword that has super high volume, has tons and tons and tons of people on it. Even still, by the way, with it, if you do have a high volume keyword that gets searched 100,000 times a month, or have an audience that has 500,000 people on it, or like 1 million, within that whole keyword or audience, there's a whole bunch of different people, and even though you can acquire data faster, instead of needing 1,000 clicks, you can need 3,000 or more, because what Google or Facebook will do is micro test, like I was talking about before, which people within that group of people who search for this keyword or in this audience what are the sub-traits that they have? They search for this keyword, but are they male? Okay, male that also search for this keyword act differently than a female. And so forth. So you will not get the full quality score or reduction in cost per click until they had not just the experience testing how much people click through on your ad and how many people stay on your page longer because they see something interesting there, but of which within those subgroups on something that has enough volume, which of the part of that individual audience or keyword is that they find to match you up with too. So that's another factor. So regardless of that, then you just keep in mind when you start out, whatever budget you invest, you have to be prepared to lose that budget as part of an investment into figuring out not only what works, but just to get that keyword or audience to work in general, because of this testing process that Google or Facebook does on their own, LinkedIn or ad network that you use does on their own. Of course, you also have to set up tracking so that the levers that you have inside your ad account that Facebook or Google lets you take advantage of adjusting, you can adjust those to the fullest advantage you have, because there'll be certain demographics that don't work, and you got to, when you start out, you won't know that this people from California basically work at half the rate Texans do, and you need to be able to adjust. Okay, I don't want California, I want Texas only, and then so you're paying to figure out through a process of elimination what's going to work. On top of that, Google, Facebook has stuff that you don't see that they're also testing on their side. So you're adjusting, they're adjusting, and they need a lot of data as a third factor just to see if your creative is working well enough to be able to give you the reduction of what you initially start out paying to go as low as it's going to go, when a lot of times you need that huge drop in cost per click you're going to get over time through those three factors I mentioned, assuming that you did a good job and everything, and you have a good product to be able to make the campaign work. And you have to do that on each keyword and each audience, because the Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever, are going to, again, test it on each keyword or audience that you do. So therefore, going full circle on this, if you have less budget, because each keyword and audience needs its own process to be tested and to drop your cost per click, you're going to need to do it on less if you don't want to wait forever, okay, for the results. And knowing that a lot of times it's impossible just to make it work until you've got so much traction on that each keyword or audience. So the main thing that you just keep in mind with all this is that determines how long you're going to have to actually wait for your market. The more competitive your market is, the longer it's going to usually take for an audience or keyword to work, because the bigger market, the more competitive markets, where there's more overall money in it, I should say, the more money is in your market, the longer and more money has been pumped into your competition's campaigns, which tells Google or Facebook or whoever how to exactly run those, and they prefer to run in which they already know is going to provide them the most optimal outcome for them and their consumers that they want clicking on their ads, okay? So if you're at a local market where there's less money in it, if you want to just call it that, it might be, typically for us, it's 0 to 3 months before you really have you're going to have your full benefit of the reduction in cost per click you will get having done a good job, and for Google or Facebook to give you the full benefit of knowing how it works and that it's showing better than what your competitions has. So you're always just, again, competing against the rest of your market in terms of letting them want to show what you have to offer, your ad, your landing page, your offer. For national, if you're doing lead generation still, this local is, product or service, if you want to call it, say that. National services, it's 3 to 6 months because generally there's more money in that. And it's harder to catch up in terms of understanding of these markets, understanding your stuff is better. And then for e-commerce, it could take 6 to 12 months on each keyword / audience to be able to build up enough traction behind what you have to show to those networks, no matter how good, again, you're doing, that it's better than what's out there already, and get the full benefit in which you will be able to really see if that keyword or audience that you're targeting will work or not, and which your creative will work or not, along with it will work or not, or be compatible with it or not as well. So respectively, even if you have a small budget and you're just targeting one keyword, it might take a month if you're in local. I would want to go 3 to 6 months even if you're in some of these national markets, depending, but still, you get my point. You can help yourself out, or you're basically forced to target less audiences or keywords if you have a tiny budget, whereas you can get to where you want to go quicker if you have a bigger budget, respectively, okay? Find out if your creative is going to work faster, and find out, of the keywords and audiences out there to test, which ones are going to work quicker, all of that, given that each one, as you know now, needs to be tested thoroughly, has to have data behind it. You have to understand which audiences, which demographics are going to work that you need to knock out for that particular keyword or audience. The ad network figure out what part of what that audience or keyword that you should show up for, and of course, to figure out that your landing page and your ad were sufficient enough to outcompete your market as well, to go along with it as well, which is its own individual factor in all of this as well. So hopefully that explains. I know it's very long, very technical, what kind of budget to start out with. Main thing I wanted to get across here is to make sure you don't give up too early, and if you do have a small budget, not to spend it in a way which you're not going to get anywhere with what you're trying to do before you run out of money. And if you have a big budget, basically how much you should spend, which is not too much, not too little, generally speaking, to get results. If you have a high overhead, to be able to optimize, have a good place to start out at. If you have unlimited money, to basically on deck to invest in this to get you up and going quickly, but without blowing, obviously tons of money, and to have a bad view of what's going on before you see it work, and then even for you, be able what you need to do before you should scale it. Hopefully that made a lot of sense either way. I have a lot of videos about other PPC money-making strategies on this channel. If you haven't seen any of them, I highly encourage you to check them out. I have a blog at guaranteedppc.com/blog with step-by-step instructions on how to build campaigns that are guaranteed to work and make money, in which if you prefer to see any kind of material like that, I have that as well to check out. If you have any questions about starting ad budgets, leave me a question or comment below about that. I'll be happy to go through for your unique situation, reconfirm anything that I said on this video. I get back to every person who leaves me a comment on this channel within a day or two. Apart from that, good luck with your campaigns or new platform that you're starting out on. Hopefully this gives you the right budget to start with, and so that you can always, or at the highest rate possible, see success with what you're doing. Find out if it's going to work in the right amount of time and money put into it, optimal budget put into it once you start.